All right. I think we're live, everyone. Appreciate you tuning in. Nick Morrow, DFS here with Occupy Fantasy. As always, helping you break down today's UFC card, UFC Noche, which begins at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. As always, I'll be giving you guys my fight by fight breakdown, kind of letting you know where I'm at as far as picks goes, what we've been watching on film. Also, going to give you kind of my angles as far as DFS goes, how we'll be building, excuse me, for both DFS and FanDuel. We're pretty hot right now as far as the show goes. Coming off another week where best bets went 4-1 at the end of the show, I'll be giving my best bets in addition to building out a quick dummy on both DraftKings and FanDuel. So definitely look forward to that. But yeah, pretty fun card here, fight night. It was originally scheduled to take place in Mexico, I believe. They did move it to San Antonio. And shouts out to Jake in our Discord for really bringing this up and making it a point of discussion this week. Texas judging has been absolutely terrible historically. Going back, I mean, the last few cards in Texas, we've seen some really egregious scorecards and decisions. One that comes to mind, Corey Sandhagen dominated Marlon Cheeto Vera in the main event last time they were in Texas. I believe that was the last time they were in Texas. One of the judges actually gave that fight to Cheeto. So just an example there. There's countless examples of just the terrible judging. So keep that in mind as you're building, as you're betting, everything else. A lot of books do offer those split decision odds. Definitely somewhere you could be looking on a card like this. But as always, please like the video. Also, subscribe to the channel. That helps us get more content like this out to you on a regular basis. And yeah, show's free. All we ask is for your likes and subscriptions, all that good stuff. And if you guys have any questions, whether they be DFS, betting, fight related, anything related to this card, happy to answer them. In the live comments, or feel free to leave a comment below, and we'll be checking those right up until lock. But yeah, without further ado, let's get into the fight by fight breakdown again. Sorry for a little bit of a delay today, just getting things squared away as we're kind of experimenting with some new times for the show. So another thing, let us know when you guys like these shows. Do you want them day of, before the card like we're doing today? Do you like them the night before? Regardless, let's get into the fight by fight breakdown here. So as far as UFC Noche goes, I mean, some would argue that they could have stacked this card a little bit more, but what I will say is the main event is tremendous. Likely a title eliminator fight at 145 pounds. Sounds like Levon Murphy is going to get the next shot at Alexander Volkanovski. But the winner of this main event is probably next in line after that. We have Gene Silva here of the Fighting Nerds taking on Diego Lopes, who is coming off that loss to Alexander Volkanovski, a fight in which he didn't really ever get going. Looked pretty good for those 5 rounds, but not good enough, obviously, to close the gap against the champion. He did secure a knockdown on Volk. Scored pretty poorly, honestly, even as a loser in a 5 round fight. But prior to that, was on an absolute tear. Wins over Sabatini, Yusuf, Ige Ortega. But yeah, I mean, the line here does feel too wide. Brian reached out to me early in the week. He's like, "Am I crazy? Is this money line off?" And yeah, at the time, I think it was minus 270 in favor of Gene Silva. Full transparency, if I'm making a pick in this fight, probably is going to be Gene Silva. I just think he's the more explosive athlete of the two. But I do think the money line's off. I would probably handicap this closer to minus 140, minus 150. So if you're the type of bettor who is just going to be placing your bets on value consistently, and again, this is a great strategy, but you have to do it consistently. If you're just looking for winners every card, I mean, I don't know. It's always better to try to find value, in my opinion, if you are someone who's following the sport week to week. Lopez, to me, is the value side. You can get him at plus 200 or better, depending on the books you're looking at. DraftKings has him at plus 205 right now. But as I'm saying all this, I mean, Gene Silva is the more explosive athlete of the two in this match. I'm just going to bring up some statistics here on one of my other monitors. Landing 4.8 significant strikes per minute compared to Lopez landing 3.7, absorbing less than Lopez as well. Lopez actually has a negative striking differential, so he's very hittable in exchanges. This guy does have a solid chin. We have seen him rocked at times. But yeah, I do think he's there to maybe be cracked. And I think books are kind of leaning into Silva as a heavy favorite because they're going to probably expect him to find a finish in this spot. The question becomes what happens if this fight hits the mat, right? We saw it last week between Benoit Saint Denis and Mauricio Ruffi. Ruffi, obviously a teammate of Gene Silva. His grappling was completely exposed. I will say, I think Silva is the better grappler of the two, if we're comparing those two fighting nerds. I also think that performance against Mitchell was somewhat telling. His ability to reverse positions against a quote unquote credentialed wrestler, Bryce Mitchell, who's honestly a little bit overrated, even on the ground at 145 pounds, has since moved down a weight class. But really, I mean, Saint Denis, a lot of his success had come on the mat. I don't think that was too surprising of a spot. That was a pick I got wrong, full transparency. I did mention that I thought Saint Denis would probably win that first round convincingly, though. So hopefully you kind of hedge your spots there. But in this fight, again, I think the money line's too wide. I think the price on Silva is a bit inflated, but he is the pick for me reluctantly. But in that same breath, I do think Lopez is one of the better underdogs on this card. And if we bring up some of the graphics over here from the model, we got Gene Silva 41% owned, Lopez 34, only 7K. You're getting him in a 5 round fight that's definitely winnable. And on these cards where you're maybe struggling to find a bunch of great underdogs, usually just go with the talent, and you're going to find that talent in these main events. We could go back a few weeks at Johnny Walker. I think I said something similar. I was picking Zhang there, Ming Yang. I thought he'd get it done, but I did think the money line was absolutely ridiculous. I did recommend getting some exposure to Johnny Walker into your lineups, given his upside as the more experienced fighter of the two. And it kind of feels a little bit similar here, albeit a tighter money line, lower weight class, a little bit less volatility in terms of the finishing on both sides. So yeah, Silva's the pick for me, but it's not a confident play at all. He's not going to be in any of my best bets. I do think Lopez is the side if you're looking for value and you want to bet a money line. And I also think for DFS, you're probably going to want this main event in most of your lineups, right? If Silva wins, most likely win condition is going to be finding that finish. If not, it's 5 rounds of high volume striking for him. And if Lopez pulls it off, even if he doesn't score that well at 7K flat in a 5 round fight, the win is probably enough for him to be optimal. So I do want heavy exposure to this main event. Definitely a fight I have circled as one I want to get a lot of exposure to on both sites as far as DFS goes. But a really fun matchup. And again, it's going to come down to the grappling. Do we think Lopez is going to really pursue that aggressively like we saw at St. Denis? Personally, I do not. Lopez averages just 0.3 takedowns per 15 minutes. I think he can mix it in to keep this close, but Silva's power is really unheard of at 145 pounds outside of someone like Ilia Topuria. And I do think that maybe Lopez's chin could be on a platter for him here. So I'm on the Silva side again, not with much confidence. But let's move into the co-main event now. A little bit of shuffling going on in this card, right? Raul Rosas was originally scheduled to take on Rob Font. Obviously, with this being Noche, kind of celebrating Mexican fighters in their culture, no surprise that they wanted Rojas in a winnable matchup. So Rob Font preparing for this fight. He's been fighting up at TriStar in Canada under the Zahabi Bros, and that's a really solid camp. I like to move up there, but for this camp specifically, he's been training under John Danaher, really working on his grappling. He says his jiu-jitsu has come a major long way in terms of his development. And yeah, I think in this matchup, it wouldn't surprise me to see him grapple a little bit. He's taking on a young fighter in David Martinez who's looked great, but we have to kind of ask ourselves against who, right? Coming off the win over Simon Oliveira, it seemed like they weren't trying to get him a win originally scheduled to take on that Vera dude, one of the worst fighters in the division. They wanted to build up the Mexican prospect. But with the shuffling going on here now, he's kind of running into a much tougher matchup. I will say this, Martinez is a good kicker. Font very much a standard boxer in his approach, striking on the feet, but Font also an excellent counter striker. So it's going to be a question of one, is Martinez getting the leg kicks off early? Is he going to be able to take away that base and that footwork from Font, who definitely has superior footwork here, in my opinion? But two, the question becomes, is Font going to try to mix in the grappling? I actually think he will. If you look at Font's recent losses, I mean, we're talking about Devison Figueiredo, Corey Sandhagen, Figgy, obviously former champion, 125 pounds. Sandhagen about to challenge for the title at 135 pounds. He's not losing to guys he shouldn't lose to. Wins over Matsumoto, obviously a very close fight. Kyler Phillips, whose stock has definitely fallen. The KO of Adrian Yanez. I mean, he's been running pretty well. 38 is old for the division, but I do think he's a rightful favorite here. A lot of dissension on this pick this week, though. So I do think Martinez is going to be a popular underdog. He does have KO upside, but we got to keep in mind, we've never seen Font knocked out before. So I think it's coming. I mean, we've seen him rocked in the fights like the Cheeto Vera fight, even the Aldo fight, some of these other spots. But he recovers really well. So yeah, I mean, when you describe a chin, it's like two two kind of measurements, right? It's like how good is your chin on that first shot and how good is your recovery. I think the first shot for Fon, his chin is definitely waning, but the recovery does still seem to be there. Could it disappear this fight? Maybe. Is Martinez going to be faster here? Yes, but I do think Fon in the big cage with his footwork should be able to mostly dictate where this fight takes place, probably after a very competitive first round. But again, another fight I'm not super confident in picking either side. I am going to be on the Font side here. Just think that the step up for Martinez is a little bit dramatic, but it's not like he's taking this fight on a huge short notice because he was in camp for this card specifically. Both these guys were. So stylistic changes here in this matchup, but really not a ton in terms of their preparation other than just, again, stylistically, strategically. I like Martinez. I've been impressed. I actually think Matsumoto is even better than him, though. I do think Martinez does a little bit of a better job kind of kicking at range compared to Matsumoto. So this maybe could be a tougher matchup for Font early. But at the same time, I do think this is a matchup where Font can maybe grapple a little bit. I don't think we were going to see that against Gene Matsumoto. And I don't want to compare Martinez and Matsumoto too much, but I mean, that's the most recent example we have if we're watching film on these guys. So I like Font here. Am I confident? No. Should you mix in Martinez as an underdog? Certainly. I know Derek, who wrote the blog, is on Martinez here. I get it. Again, Font's getting up there in age. I think we can see that floor fall out for him in terms of his durability and everything else any fight now. So if it's not here, maybe the next one. But I'll go with Font one more time. Again, lacking confidence. Don't love him for DFS. But if the ownership stays low, he's someone I will probably have more exposure than the field will. Moving right along here, let's go into this feature bout between Rafa Garcia and Jared Gordon. I did not talk about the money line for Font. He's minus 115 to minus 120, depending on your book. And again, Gene Silva floating around minus 230 to 250. So that's overinflated for me. But yeah, moving into this next fight here, we got Jared Gordon floating around minus 210 to minus 230, depending on your book. Rafa Garcia minus one or plus 170, excuse me, to plus 190. These are two similar fighters in a lot of ways, kind of wrestle boxers, kind of built for MMA more than they are kind of standard boxing. They both have solid durability. They both strike pretty well. They both keep a tight guard. Gordon definitely the more successful of the two. They're both getting up there in age, but wins over Thiago Moises, Marco Madsen, a fight against Bobby Green, he was looking great in before that was turned to a no contest due to the headbutt. Obviously, the controversial decision loss to Patty Pimblett. I'm just more impressed with Gordon's resume recently. Again, these are two guys who are very similar stylistically. I will say if there's any edge in this fight to give to Garcia, it's probably his durability. Really tough chin on him. We have seen Gordon kind of put down at times. But again, I don't really rate Garcia's striking power all that highly. So I think the most likely way to beat Jared Gordon is to knock him out. But I don't know that Garcia necessarily has that power. And yeah, I actually think the better grappler here is probably going to be Jared Gordon as well. So I like the Gordon side. I don't love the price, and that is going to kind of be a theme of this card. Rightful favorite is Gordon. Do think he's a side. Do want to have exposure in DFS, but if I'm being completely honest, there's not a ton of value on his money line. So going back to the judging comment earlier, talking about those Texas judges, you could bet any of these fights to go to split decision and probably feel pretty good about it. There's been a lot of dissension on these cards, even when they seem clear. So just taking a few shots on decisions, this would be one of the fights I would consider doing that in. I think you're getting plus 300 to 400 just for the fight to go to a split, and you don't even have to pick the winner. Or you can pick Gordon by split, Gordon by decision to get a better number on him. Could he finish Garcia? Maybe. I do think he's much more technically skilled. I do think his footwork is superior. I think defensively he does a better job, but again, Garcia is super durable. So I do think this fight goes over. I'm going to be on the Gordon side here as far as the pick goes. I wouldn't be surprised to see one of the judges flip to Garcia, though, even if we think it's clear for Gordon. So proceed with some caution there. But yeah, let's keep plugging away here. Another really, I don't want to call it fun, but a funny matchup because of Kelvin Gastelum's inability to make weight. Taking on Dustin Stoltzfus here, looking at the betting lines right now. Kelvin floating around a minus 220 to minus 250 as wide as some books. And historically, Kelvin has had trouble making weight. He probably gets cut after this fight, win or lose. A guy who used to try to make 170 realized he couldn't. Going back to that Daniel Rodriguez fight, he was actually supposed to fight him at 170 pounds. They renegotiated to move up a weight class. And what do you know? Once again, Kelvin here missing weight by 6 pounds, I believe. Um, But yeah, the thing with Kelvin is he makes a ton of money as he's a former title challenger. I think his contract is like 300 to 400K flat. Don't quote me on that. I believe that's the ballpark though. So Stolz was taking this fight because he's getting 30% of that purse win or lose. So you're getting over 100 grand just to fight Kelvin here. And Stolz was not a guy whose contract probably pays him that unless he wins. He's probably a 50-50 guy on his second or third UFC contract. But Stolz, I mean, one of these guys, there's a few fighters on this card I'll describe this way. His parts are good, but he doesn't necessarily put it all together. He doesn't necessarily mix the martial super well. Decent on the feet, powerful striker, can take some damage, and he does have slick jujitsu. It's just he kind of struggles, kind of going from one facet of his game to the other. And he's also a very low fight IQ guy. In some of these matchups, I mean, he's winning until he's losing. Ruzaboyev, he had top time on him. Probably should have won that fight before he was eventually reversed and swept against Mearshart. Fight he was dominating before he made mistakes late. Rodolfo Vieira, another good example of him kind of giving the fight away, even though he should have probably been winning it. And while Gastelum's weight miss is a major, major red flag for me, I do think he's the better fighter here, no matter where this one goes. Really solid technical striking ability, good takedown defense. I think he's going to be able to mostly keep this fight standing. And yeah, even getting up there in age and kind of struggling at times, he looked okay against Joe Pyfer his last time out. So I do think Gastelum's the side here. I don't want to pay 9K for him in DFS, though, if I'm being completely honest. Um, so yeah, just proceed with some caution. Comment here from Chris. Appreciate you. What is the ownership for Jared Gordon? So again, guys, gonna plug the model. You get ownership on both sites for everyone. I'm happy to answer a couple of these questions though. Looking at DK, Gordon, he's low, very low. 15% owned on DK, 13% on FanDuel. Only 2% is the FanDuel MVP. So if you are confident in Gordon, he's a really good way to get different if you can find a salary for him, in my opinion. Again, I do think he gets it done here. I do think he scores pretty well. He has been scoring well in his wins, but Rafa is super durable, so the finish may be hard to come by. Yeah, going back to this fight again, I think Kelvin's the side, but like is the case on many of these fights, I just think he's a little bit too inflated as a money line favorite. Minus 220 doesn't feel great. If anyone's going to find a finish here, I mean, it could actually be the Stoltzfus side. Um, I don't know. I could see him maybe snatching a leg or hitting a quick submission on the mat. Kelvin, we could go back to that Jack Hermanson fight where he was leg locked almost instantly. Not a great grappler. Sean Brady able to take him out via submission as well. His chin is an absolute brick, though. So if you're going to finish Kelvin, probably has to come via sub. Kelvin could knock out Stoltzfus here, especially in the later rounds. I prefer the Kelvin side. I think he gets it done, but the weight miss is a major, major red flag. So just keep that in mind. Um, yes, Chris Jones, that is my name. Nick Morrow DFS. Appreciate you. Johnny, I'll talk about top values for cash as we go through this. I'll give you one right now, though. I definitely think Lopes in the main event is someone you can probably key in on. If you think that fight goes over the 2.5 round mark at 7K flat on DK, you're definitely going to want some exposure to him. There's a few other underdogs on this card that I do like. And as I talk through these, I'll get you guys a few more of those. But another one here, actually, Diego Ferreira, 7,800. Priced as the underdog, but if we look at the betting market, this line is flipped throughout the week. He is now the money line favorite over Alexander Hernandez, Alexander the Great, quote unquote Hernandez, who is coming off. He keeps changing his nickname, coming off that KO win over Chase Hooper. Obviously, scored tremendously there as a heavy underdog. Interesting matchup here, though. Diego Ferreira getting up there in age. I will say he's probably the more skilled fighter everywhere this one goes. But the speed advantage is going to be on the Hernandez side, certainly. So keep that in mind. Scrolling down. But yeah, Fernandez, I'm putting their names together. Ferreira, 4.82 significant strikes landed per minute, absorbing just 3.46. Hernandez actually has a negative striking differential, landing 4.3, absorbing 4.6. But again, we're dealing with extremely long sets of data for Ferrera. This guy's been in the promotion forever. Honestly, Hernandez has as well. So the stats, while they do tell a bit of a story, I mean, take them with a bit of a grain of salt as well. When Ferrera struggles, it's usually against grapplers. I mean, each of his last three losses have come against guys who are wrestlers, right? Gregor Gillespie, Matuz Gamrot, and Grant Dawson, all guys who were able to take him down with relative ease. I don't really see Hernandez as that type of fighter here. I actually think Ferrera is someone who could maybe pursue takedowns. He does have tremendous submission grappling ability, but on the feet, I do think he can be dangerous. He's going to need to stay safe early. Hernandez showed us in the Hoover fight; he still has that power. I like him up at 155 pounds, which is where he's fighting here again. Seemed to struggle to make 145, which was compromising his chin and his cardio. But this is a guy who trains at altitude with the likes of Garule, who we'll talk about in a little bit, Brendan Royval, that defunct Factory X camp. These guys did stick together, even though their coach is no longer there. But yeah, I think Hernandez is live as a dog, but he's priced as a favorite. So for me, I do think Diego Ferreira is someone I want to get heavy exposure to here. Again, don't love the age gap. We're talking about 7 or so years, 6 years, 7 years. But when we look at Ferreira's losses, they come to a very specific type of fighter, a grappler. And I don't really see Hernandez as that guy. If we go to the ownership, um, yeah, going back to the Flan fight, Martin is very popular as an underdog. Kind of surprised that we're not seeing more love for Ferreira, though. Let me take a look here on my other monitor. Here we go. 24% owns on DK, 32 on FanDuel. So he's starting to get some steam. But again, price is an underdog, now a favorite. Usually a good thing for DFS. It should be a competitive matchup. I definitely want exposure to both sides. But if Hernandez is going to be similarly owned, and it looks like he will, I do like the value that you're getting for Ferrera here. Do think he probably gets it done either via late finish or via decision. Um, could see the submission. I don't know. I think more likely than not it goes to the cards though. And again, we're dealing with these Texas judges, so just proceed with some caution there. Really tricky matchup here, in my opinion, between two guys who are still learning about Santiago Luna, uh, Border Boy, as this nickname is pretty hilarious, and then Quang Bang Lee here coming off that nice win over Gaston Bolanos via submission. This is a tricky one again, because Luna has looked good on his regional tape, but we really haven't seen him tested against UFC level competition. Very young fighter, prefers to strike, seems to have some decent grappling ability as well. 6-0 record, born in 2004, making me feel old. Obviously, only 21 years old here, and he is going to be the Mexican fighter, going to have the crowd behind him. But I do think Lee is another underdog that I have circled as someone I'll probably be getting to on the money line. Not going to be a best bet, but looking right now, I mean, you're seeing even money on some books, so definitely seeing money come in on both sides. But up to plus 130 and plus 140, depending on where you're betting, I do think Lee is the value side. It's just we see these young fighters come in, some of them perform. But historically, I mean, getting under the UFC lights for the first time, not having a contender series fight, doesn't necessarily play to your advantage. And while Luna has looked really good, and I do think he probably has the better career trajectory of these two, it's tough for me to project him as the winner here against the guy in Quang Bang Lee, who we've actually seen have some success already in the promotion. Luna, again, decent everywhere. I think Lee is actually going to be the better grappler in this matchup. I think that's his path to victory, and that does play well for DFS. So for me, I do think Lee is someone I want to get exposure to. Luna drawing plenty of ownership, though. These guys are similarly owned on both sites. So you're not really getting leverage on either side. A fight I would want exposure to on both sides because we have seen Lee finished via KO. But Lee also has power. So this fight probably doesn't go to the scorecards. Um, I just question the durability of these two. But again, Luna's never been finished. He's just 21, taking on a big, big step up in terms of competition here. I can't sit here and say I'm super confident on either side, though. Again, we have a lot of questions about both these guys. But for me, the value side's Lee. I like him on the money line. I would have more exposure than I do on this Luna kid. But the UFC is bringing in Luna as this young Mexican prospects to kind of hype him up, right? This is the Noche card. Um, so yeah, there is some narrative on his side, but again, just a tricky fight to me. It is popular too, so not something that I really think I want to build my night around. Really funny matchup here. One of the lower level matchups you're going to see in the UFC between Dusko Todorovic taking on, I thought it was Carlos Medina, but whatever. J. Daniel Medina here. Medina, one of the few fighters. We actually saw this week. in a women's fight, but one of the few fighters on Contender Series to get signed in a loss. He is since coming off 2 losses, finished last time out of that knee against Gaudier, who's an absolute beast. Went to the distance with Zach Reese, we'll talk about in a little bit. But this guy, I mean, he's tough, right? And when we're talking about guys at a bar, if you're tough, you can probably win a lot of fights. But when we're talking about the UFC, if your best skill is that you're tough, usually that's a bad sign. Medina lands only 2.1 significant strikes per minute. He absorbs 5.25, just a 31% takedown defense for him here as well, which is why Todorovic is the favorite that he is. Excuse me. He lost last time out against Reese. He was competitive though in that decision. He did have his moments. His cardio didn't appear to improve. His chin does seem to be holding up better than it had earlier in his UFC career. But when we look at his wins too, it's Maki Pitolo, Jordan Wright, two guys who are no longer in the promotion. Again, this is such a low level matchup. Like game theory and principle alone, there's some merit to just going with Medina here, right? But at the same time, it's like, how does he win this fight? He doesn't really have the power to take out Dusko, even though Dusko's kind of shitty. He doesn't really have anything on the mat for Dusko, in my opinion. So I am on the Todorovic side here. I do think Dusko can find the early finish as well, especially if he chooses to grapple. But if you're paying such a premium for a couple guys on this card, it's tough to want to click a guy like Dusko, whose only wins have come against the absolute bottom of the barrel as far as UFC competition goes. Townsend, too, another guy who did not last very long in this promotion. I'm on Dusko here. I think he probably gets it done inside the distance. But again, Medina is so tough. You could extend this fight and make it ugly late. So um, I don't know. You'd probably be wise not to get over invested on either side here. I do think Dusko for me is very clearly the pick. I do think the money line, like I'm saying, in a lot of these fights is way too wide though. He should probably not be a minus 3 to 400 favorite against anyone on the UFC roster. But in that same breath, if there was someone, it would be Medina. So uh, yeah, not really crazy about this one. But let's go ahead into the next matchup here. And this fight is low on the card, right? On the prelims, but this is a pretty high level matchup. So it doesn't always mean that the higher on the card you are, the higher level the fight will be, right? And a good example of that comes right here. Amanda Lemos and Tatiana Suarez, two fighters who have challenged for um, what is it, the flyweight title. And yeah, Suarez, obviously credentialed wrestler, coming off that loss to Weili Zhang, won the first round and then pretty much gassed out immediately. But she is a dominant wrestler, as dominant as the division scene probably since Carla Esparza. Olympic credentials, she's beaten cancer. This woman's been dealing with injuries her whole career, overcome a lot. But she's getting up there in age now. At the same time, though, she is the younger fighter in this matchup by 3 years, taking on Amanda Lemos, coming off that win over Lucindo. Prior to that, lost to Janaroba. But yeah, I mean, she's only losing to either title challengers or title winners in Weili Zhang. But this is a very binary matchup, right? And whenever we describe binary fights, it means it can usually go one of two ways. Lemos is the way better striker here by a wide margin, dramatic margin. She doesn't land a ton of volume. She is very powerful, though. And Suarez's striking is more just a means to get to her grappling. She'll pepper out that jab, but throw a few overhands more to just kind of find those entries for takedowns. It's brought her a lot of success, but in a matchup like this, it could be tough at times to close the distance. I do think Suarez is a side here, right? Lemos, we've seen her struggle against grapplers like Jandaroba, like Weili Zhang, and Suarez is on that level in terms of her wrestling, in my opinion. I also like that this is a 3 round fight, not a 5 round fight, because Suarez's cardio is a bit of an issue, but I don't think over 15 minutes it will be. And I think for DFS purposes, she probably finds the takedowns she needs to either score a submission or score pretty well, consistently over 100 fantasy points in her wins. And yeah, talking about ownership here, 42% owned for Tatiana. She's going to be one of the more popular pay ups on the entire slate. And yeah, I didn't talk about it last time. Excuse me. But Dusko rating is the top OF index play on the entire slate, right next to Tatiana Suarez. So it's going to be tough to fit the two of them. But they are excellent plays if you're looking at the model. I do think they both get it done. I do have the best bet on the Suarez Lemos fight. We'll get to it a little bit. I think there's a way you could kind of cover yourself regardless, but I like the Suarez side. I think she probably gets it done inside the distance. But would I be surprised if Lemos stuffed a few takedowns and took her out on the feet? No. Again, Lemos, really good striker. Great footwork too, but the takedown defense is pretty weak. So sometimes we see really good strikers able to use their footwork to kind of evade grapplers. We've seen that a lot of out of Sania's career. Like some of these guys who it feels like the floor is lava at times, right? For Lemos, that should kind of be her game plan here. But again, Dusko, Tatiana, two of the best DFS plays on the entire slate. Um, but yeah, let's keep plugging away. Um, And yeah, guys, again, like the video, subscribe to the channel, keep getting your questions in. Happy to answer anything and everything, whether DFS, betting related, anything related to this card, really. Um, but the likes and subscriptions definitely help us get more free content like this out to you. Just to recap that one again, I'm on the Suarez side. I do think Lemos is live as a dog, but she's not going to score well if she's on her back. So proceed with some caution there. Suarez, massive, massive upside. Really interesting matchup here between Jesus Aguilar and Luis Garule. I talked about Garule when I was describing Hernandez. He does train with those X Factory X guys, the likes of Brandon Moivel, Alexander Hernandez, etc. So his cardio, I know some people this week have been saying it's an issue for him. It should continue to improve as he's trading up there in elevation. Um, but yeah, super disappointing last time out, right? But when you consider how good Osborne looked against Steve Ursig, someone who fought for the flyweight title, it lost his aging kind of well. If Osborne has anything, it is that KO power. Garule looked great early there, mixing in his grappling, having some control time, ground and pound success before he was caught on the feet. And then Aguilar, another guy who, to me, has really kind of outperformed his expectations at the UFC level. He is an excellent guillotine, right? Um, and I think he's probably going to pursue that here. Garula is someone who looks for takedowns. So Aguilar is live for an early upset. Excuse me. If he can find that quick submission on a takedown entry. But for me, I do think Garula is the side, just a much better striker, the much stronger fighter here. I think his cardio concerns are overblown. I think his chin concerns are overblown. We look at Aguilar's striking. The only KO win he has is over Shannon Ross, who pretty much everyone KO'd who faced him in the UFC. So definitely take that with a grain of salt. But again, Garula is somewhat unproven. A guy a lot of people were high on coming into the promotion off the Contender Series, but I don't know, mediocre performance against Piccanini on Contender Series, and then that loss to Osborne. While it has aged well, it was a disappointing result for him as a considerable favorite in that matchup. But I do think he's the side here against Aguilar. I just am concerned about that guillotine, if I'm being completely honest. So if you want to sprinkle Aguilar by sub, I don't hate it. If you want to just go inside the distance here, I think Garule could find the KO or a ground and pound finish on the mat. But yeah, I mean, Aguilar has a path to victory. When we're talking about underdogs, you always have to say, hey, what is the path to victory? When we talk about Medina, it's like, I don't know that he has it unless Dusko starts to fade or gets hurt late. In a fight like this, I do think the underdog does have a very clear path, so don't mind mixing in it. Aguilar, two exposures. But at the same time, Brule is the better fighter. I do think more likely than that, he gets it done. Probably inside the distance. Wouldn't be shocked to see go to the decision, though. Another fight here. Excuse me, guys. Another fight here that can only be described as low level. We have Zachary Reese taking on Cedricus Dumas. Some like to call him dumbass. I won't do that, but I wouldn't argue if you want to. Cedricus, just not the best character. This guy has had a ton of issues with the law. Missed his last fight because he couldn't get his ankle bracelet off. A lot of breaking and entering charges, domestic violence. I don't know. I don't want to talk too much about the guy negatively. And again, these are cage fighters at the end of the day. It's not like we need to be looking up to them. But he hasn't been impressive at all. And like, I'm a little bit confused that he hasn't been cut from the promotion yet. But at the same time, I mean, his back's against the wall here. Posting this week on social media, he's $14 in his bank account. Probably comes out aggressive. And Reese, he's tall. His chin is there to be hit. So it wouldn't shock me to see Dumas finish Reese here. But I think Reese is very clearly the rightful favorite. We go back to the graphics here. We have Reese as the third best OF Index play on the entire slate. 122 OF Index score. Really, really solid. Love the price on him, too. Getting a bit of a discount off of Suarez and Todorovic. And yeah, he's going to be very popular too, though. So just keep that in mind. If you want the clearest leverage spot on the card, it is probably Cedricus Dumas. In that same breath, though, I mean, friends don't let friends play Cedricus Dumas. I think he has a chance. We will get to the best bet soon. I do have a pick on this card, but I think Reese gets it done. Reese, again, he's tall. Dumas, in a lot of his fights that he has success, he is able to use that reach. He only has a 2 inch reach advantage here. Reese able to switch stances. I think fighting out a southpaw, he can find a KO. But I think the clearest path for him is definitely on the mat. Averages 2.8 takedowns per 15 minutes, 1.2 submission attempts as well per 15 minutes. And Dumas, someone who does stick his neck out, someone who has decent BJJ, but not necessarily defensively to the point that I'm prepared to think he stays safe from the Zach Reese choke series. And again, these are two guys kind of with their backs against the wall. I mean, Reese probably not as much, but a loss here would definitely hurt his stock in a big way. But Dumas, I mean, fighting to probably stay on the roster. But again, they keep letting this guy fight, so who really knows? But I'm on Reese here by the finish. And shouts out Derek Phillips too. We actually have an excerpt from the MMA Daily Plug. Again, to plug the premium content, no pun intended. Definitely check out the links in the description below. Just $7 to get behind that paywall. But excerpt from Zach, or excerpt from Derek, not Zach. Not only does Reese have the highest finish odds on the entire slate, far and away the most likely fighter to win in round one. Again, this is according to books. Overall, Reese is one of the best overall plays on the board. Will be someone who invested heavily this week despite the ownership. I will personally be overweight on both fighters in this fight. And again, I do think the best leverage point on the entire card is Dumas, but I want Reese in most of my lineups. Last week, what did I say? I was like, I would not have 100%. What was his name? Who beat Hardwick? I was like, I'd have 90% and maybe 10 of the other guy. Like, this is kind of that spot again. Like, I want Reese in 80 to 90% of my lineups, and I would hedge with Dumas and the others. Not a fight I really want to fade. I do think Reese is the side. The model loves him as the best play on the board. But the leverage potential for someone like Dumas in a volatile sport like MMA makes him appealing for DFS. It's as simple as that. Appreciate you, Chino. Who is your favorite dog? Let me see here. I got a few that I'm on this week. I think right now it's probably Quan Lee. I just think Luna's talented, but I think Lee's going to have a grappling advantage there. It's kind of yet to be seen. Other dogs that I like. Um, I mean, that's the big one for me, if I'm being completely honest. I do think Lopes, if you're just looking at money line plays, is one I'd have circled. If you're only playing DFS, though, Diego Ferreira is actually the money line favorite now, but he's priced as the underdog on both sides. So, short answer, Quan Lee. I also like Ferreira if we're talking DFS. I do think the most value on any underdog is probably Diego Lopes, though. If he's not finished, that fight probably plays out extremely close. All right, really interesting spot here. Fight I spent a lot of time on this week, right? Alessandro Costa taking on Alden Correa. So initially, when I saw this fight announced, I thought Costa was going to absolutely steamroll him. Then I went back and I was like, oh, actually, I've watched this Correa guy fight before. He's been fighting on LFA. Last night, Gable Stevenson had his win there, but LFA is pretty much the AAA of the UFC. It's their feeder promotion. Guys who win titles there usually come up to the UFC. Go ahead, Google LFA fighters in the UFC. I mean, there's probably 50 to 100 at this point at any given time. But Corey is a guy who's had success recently. Really good striker, really solid understanding of footwork, surprising power for his frame. Um, and generally, durable as well. Costa, a guy who has been very impressive but hasn't been active. He's been out of action since 2024. Wins over Borjas and Flick. Two fights he certainly should be fighting KOs in. Then his losses against the peak of the division in Ursing and Albazi. So this is a guy who we still have questions about. Like, he's running through the guys he should run through. He's losing to the guys who you can't really feel too bad about him losing to. So what are we going to see here? I think the line, the money line, and again, I know I keep saying this, is too wide. It has closed. I think Costa was up to a minus 500. He's around minus 310 to minus 400 now. So there is a lot of money coming in on the Correa side. But I think the path here for Costa is clear. It's via grappling. He needs to get Correa down. I actually think Correa can hang on the feet in this match, if I'm being completely honest. But Costa only averaging 0.3 takedowns per 15 minutes. So the path to victory for him is there. It's clear. He can look like a massive favorite. But if he's just going to play this out at striking range, I am concerned. I think more likely than not, though, we do see him take it to the mat where he should be able to find success. It would be super frustrating if he's not pursuing takedowns here. Able to take Ursig down. Yeah, it was decent takedown defense. And again, Coria, I think a guy who has a future in this division, really skilled striker, good footwork. He has some BJJ in his back pocket, but the strength and the explosiveness of Costa, I think, is the difference here. And I think more likely than not, that is an advantage for him on the mat compared to where it is going to be at striking range. These guys both listed with a 67-inch reach. Um, I don't know that that's accurate. I think Coria's could be a little bit longer. He's 4 inches taller, definitely long for a flyweight. So initially, Costa inside the distance was like my favorite play on this entire card. But digging in a little bit more, I am proceeding with some caution just because I do think Corey is a really good striker. I don't mind mixing him in a little bit if you're playing a bunch of lineups. But yeah, Costa's upside is definitely on the mat via the grappling. Could he find a flash KO? Sure. We've seen it before. But Corey's footwork and striking solid. But again, these guys making their debut, usually those UFC lights can be a little bit too much too soon for some of them. So something to keep an eye on. But again, I do think Corey belongs. We've seen guys like Hardwick last week who looked terrible, probably doesn't have a ton of wins on this roster, but I do think someone like Corey does. He's just running into a really tough matchup against a really explosive guy in Costa who I hope grapples here. Speaking of low level matchups here, we have Montese Rendon, not to be confused with Montserrat Ruiz, another Mexican fighter, taking on Alice Pereira, not to be confused with Eileen Pereira, who is Alex Pereira's sister. This is not his sister. So anyone telling you that is wrong. Just get that out of the way here. And in some ways, this is a binary matchup. Pereira, a striker, only 19 years old. UFC definitely looking to kind of build her stock. But she's taken on pretty much nobody regionally. I've been impressed with what I've seen, but again, it's another example, kind of similar to who was it, Luna, where it's like, yeah, they've looked good, but against who? And I feel that way about Pereira. At the same time, the UFC is giving her maybe the most winnable fight on the roster here against Montserrat Rendon. Rendon, not a good striker. She has some wrestling and grappling ability, but she doesn't do anything with it. She takes her opponents down. We don't see her passing the guard. We don't see her advancing position. Um, Never finding mount in a professional MMA fight as someone who is a primary grappler, definitely a red flag. So yeah, I don't love Rendon here, but the experience advantage is huge. So I think the UFC wants her to win. I think Rendon would be wise to push her up against the cage, trying to take her to the mat. Um, but yeah, like as much as I want to pick Rendon here as an underdog, I don't rate her at all. So again, it's such a low level matchup. It's tough to feel confident on either side. I do think Pereira is the rightful favorite. I do think she's the much better striker. But Rendon could make this ugly. She could make it close. And again, these Texas judges, you never know what you're going to get. So Rendon, another underdog you should probably have some exposure to. Pereira does have KO upside here. Again, Rendon's super hittable. Absorbing zero point 0.8 more strikes than she lands per minute against really low level competition. So um, I don't know. Pereira's the favorite here. I think it's deserved. Will I be betting her? Absolutely not. Do I want some exposure here? Sure, but I actually think the value is probably on the underdog if we're talking about DFS. I see these questions coming in, guys. I'll definitely get to them all. But one more fight here, and then we can kind of get to questions. We'll also do the dummy build on both sites, and I'll give you guys my best bets and long shots. We'll recap last week real quick as well. Um, so this is the Ultimate Fighter finale. Um, this was supposed to take place at 319. Um, but yeah, we had issues on both sides, I think, going into that one. These guys do seem to be 100% healthy. Anyone who watched that season, they were both Cormier fighters. Cormier and Chael Sonnen were the coaches. Senzonato, well rounded. Most of his success comes on the mat. Good jiu-jitsu, decent wrestler. More than willing to exchange in a firefight, though. And I think that's going to be trouble for him here against a guy in Dubchenko who is an explosive striker who does have some grappling ability, especially offensively. And I actually prefer his chin and cardio here. So when this fight was initially announced, I thought the value was on the Senzonato side. He's the better grappler. Usually when we're talking about low level or debutantes, I mean, go with the grappler because they have the clear path. But I think Donchenko has the hips to mostly keep this fight standing. Um, but again, I mean, we're talking about the other Ultimate Fighter finale between Alibi Idris and Jose Morales, right? Or Joseph Morales. That fight went how no one really expected it to. In the season, Idris looked great, looked terrible that night. Morales, a guy who had been cut from the UFC, looked tremendous in that spot. So who knows how these guys come out and look here. But to me, Donchenko, the more explosive striker, I think Senzanato probably wins the first round, getting a couple takedowns. But as this fight wears on, I think his chin's going to be there to be hit. And Senzanato, like I said, a little bit too eager to exchange in firefights. So Donchenko the side for me. I do believe he's very popular, though. Don't quote me on that. I'm going to check my other screen real quick. Yeah, 21% on DK, 28 on FanDuel. So probably a little bit more popular than he should be. At the same time, Senzanato about the same own. So if you're looking for underdogs, you can do worse than Senzanato. I do think Donchenko gets it done probably inside the distance. All right, so let's pull up quickly the top plays again in the model. And again, you guys want access to the full model, you get an OF index for every fighter on this card. Go ahead and check the links in the description below. Describe them by me here. Where we go here. But Dusko, Tatiana Reese, all projected to score tremendously well, all likely to find wins via finish. And then we look at the ownership. I mean, the main event's very popular. And I'm going to use this here, Jared, to kind of segue into your question, right? Do you ever take fighters from the same fight? You see that sometimes. So, yes. In low risk contests, in like cash game type contest, 100-man stuff, that's more common. That's something you want to do more often. And usually you do want to target the main events because they do have the extra rounds. So if you think this fight goes long, you can stack Lopes and Silva. Again, just because you don't love any of the other cheap underdogs. You're trying to fit a Reese and a Suarez and a Silva. So it makes some sense. But on cards where we like a lot of underdogs, I try to get away from that. I will say there are examples of 3 round fights where they score tremendously well. The Josh Van versus Brandon Royval fight is one that comes to mind. But in those matchups, usually you want 2 super high volume strikers. I don't know that we have that much on this card, if I'm being completely honest. Um, just looking through everything, like the only fight I really have much interest in stacking would be the main event. I guess Font Martinez could turn into an absolute war, but more likely than not, Font's trying to mix in the grappling if that goes long. So you could go with the main event here, definitely in low risk, but the most likely win outcome for Silva is probably via finish, in which case Lopes wouldn't score that well. There's more than a few underdogs that I've listed that I like on this card, so I would probably say no in your larger contest, but in something small field, low risk, you could go ahead and stack that main event. At the same time, if we go back to last week, I mean, Imavov, excuse me, and Barallo, they both scored terribly in that 5 round fight. So if you stack that one, you were in trouble. But I do think we see a lot more action here. 2 aggressive guys, Silva especially. So I don't mind it. But again, it depends on the card. Some of these bigger pay per views, you get 2 5 round fights. Usually, if you're doing that, you want it to be a 5 rounder. You don't want a ton of underdogs, and it's better in low risk contests, just to kind of quickly summarize. But yeah, let's go ahead and do a quick build on both sites, and I'll get into my best bets. So yeah, I think an easy way to build is to kind of start with your preferred value. Like I said, I think he's going to be popular, but Ferreira now being a favorite to me stands out in a big way. I like Quan Lee, but then again, we're going to struggle to fit multiple of these top plays if we're going this way, right? Um, I don't know. I think I'd rather go with Diego Lopez in DFS than Silva, even though I'm picking Silva. I just think he's one of the better values. Um, my nose doesn't stop running. But if we're going this way, we can go with Reese. I think he's kind of a consensus favorite here at Occupy. And then maybe like a Dusko or a Suarez. We also have 9,100 left over. So maybe a Jared Gordon or a Donchenko. But something like this, and on FanDuel, I'll go with Silva instead of Lopez. But like I said, I think Lopez, in terms of point per dollar, with the 5 round nature of his matchup, one of the best underdogs on the card. I really like Ferrer and Lee, and then we're getting upside here. We'd love to get to Suarez over Gordon, but it's tough. So this is a really solid build. Again, this will be due leaving 0 on the table. So keep that in mind. Maybe to get a little bit different, you come off Gordon, go with a Donchenko or Garuli, something like that. But I do really like this build a lot. To get a little bit different on FanDuel, let's go with Silva at captain, assuming he gets the KO, right? If we're paying that premium, we're going to need a knockdown or two, probably going to need the finish. And again, we're playing Lopez on DK, so we're kind of just hedging that a little bit. I like Puelas here. Did we skip that fight? I don't know that I talked about that fight. Was that not even in here? My bad. Where the hell is the Puelas fight? Did that get called off? Or... All right, so I didn't talk about the Claudio Puelles fight, and I don't know why. One, two, three, four. It's like I'm scrolling here, right? Am I not insane? Like we go to Donchenko to Suarez, hit next, then we're getting Todorovic. All right, so let me go ahead and bring up Puelo Silva. Sorry about that, guys. Maybe because there's two Silvas, I missed it. But yeah, Joaquim Silva, better known as Neto BJJ, well-rounded fighter. Definitely the better striker in this matchup by a decent margin. He does like to grapple, though, and he's getting up there in age. Claudio Puelles is someone I never thought I'd want to back again. But he has switched camps to Killcliff FC, where he's been getting really good work. But if you see him kind of weighing in this week, he looks to be massive. Claudio Puelles, that is. This is a guy who suddenly appears to be on steroids. Not to speculate too much. He looks huge, though. And he is a guy who we see winning fights against good grapplers. Freziem, tough matchup. He was competitive there, 7 minutes of control time. Wins over Jordan Levitt. Obviously looked terrible, terrible in that Dan Hooker fight, but Hooker is one of the best fighters in the world, 155 pounds. So just the optics of that fight, excuse me, are so terrible that I never thought I'd want to back this guy again. But he did look okay against CM even in that loss. So Playlist for me is going to be the pick here. And it's funny that we missed this one because I want to go ahead and use him on FanDuel where he's priced at 15. I think he's going to get takedowns. Control time obviously scores better on DK, but I do think he's live for the submission if Silva's getting frustrated. And Silva can be aggressive in his scrambles, maybe falls into a trap or something like that. But yeah, I like Pointless here. But let's go ahead. Since we have Silva, I don't know. I'll go Ferrer again. Excuse me. I don't know. For the sake of this build, maybe we go Stolzfus, hoping he can catch fat Kelvin Gastelum. Then we're left with 19 per. Go right back to Zach Reese. We didn't use him on the other side, so maybe we go Donchenko, something like this. But pretty easy to build this week. Obviously, got to mix in a couple underdogs on both sides to get these guys we really like in terms of effects. But it's easy enough. Take a sip here. All right, guys. Appreciate you again. Coming up on the top of the hour. We had some technical difficulties early, but now the best bets. My favorite part of the show. And quickly to recap, last week we went 4-1. This is the record going into last week. But the only one we got wrong was that Tavares decision. He got caught late there. But to get Hughes, Patterson, all of these other four right feels really good. 2 weeks in a row at 4-1. We also hit 2 of the 4 long shots. Hughes were Spain at under 2.5, obviously hit. Jones by KO sub in a crazy, crazy fight. To hit those two felt really good. And then, yeah, obviously Imavov didn't get the KO, but to hit 2 long shots and go 4-1 on the best bets feels pretty damn good. Let's do it again this week. So, best bets. Oh, sorry, guys. Donchenko versus Senzanato. I think Senzanato's live to find a submission early. I think he's the better grappler. I think Donchenko, though, as his fight wears on, is going to be landing on the feet. I think he's the much more powerful striker of the two. I like this to stay under 2.5 rounds, plus 135. Love the value there. And again, for these best bets, never going worse than minus 200. Costa Coria, this one I'm kind of torn on, but I do think under 2.5 looks good. I was initially going to be on the Costa inside the distance, but it's only plus 110. Like I said, I think Corey's striking is underrated. Costa's been caught before. So the under 2.5 to me is a little bit more value. Reese versus Dumas, definitely prefer the Reese side, but if Dumas were to catch him, it would probably come early. So the under 1.5 there looks great to me. Then I mentioned Poiles, not a guy I ever thought I'd have as a best bet. But there is some value on his money line, in my opinion. I think it's going to be very easy for him to grapple for 15 minutes. He can find the submission, but if he doesn't, probably wins via decision. Lemos versus Suarez here. Fight doesn't go the distance, minus 175. Very much prefer the Suarez side. But again, you're kind of hedging your bets here. Going fight doesn't go the distance. You have to pay a little bit of juice, but if Lemos wins, it's probably a KO on the feed, if we're being completely honest. I'd be surprised to see him win the decision. So no distance. Back-to-back weeks where we went 4-1, now 22-15 on these best bets. We go 4-1 again, man. That's 12-3, 3 weeks. That's a hell of a run. Let's keep it going. And then the long shots, right? I got Costa by submission. I think it's his most likely path. Plus 350 to me is great value. Lee to win inside the distance. KO or submission plus 350 again. I think Luna's talented. This is a big step up for him. Rob Font by KO or sub. I get people liking the Martinez side. I just think this number is off. He could find the KO. He's been talking about finding a submission here. Will he? Probably not, but you're covered either way that way. Plus 650 is just really good value. Then if Lopez were to pull this off, probably be a decision. Silva does seem really durable. Could see him maybe finding the submission, but to get plus 650 on him as a decision to me is just absolutely crazy. So again, quick recap here. Best bets. Not going to read through them all. I'll use this opportunity again to thank you all for tuning in. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Any comments, feel free to get them in this last minute here. If not, just leave them below the video. Happy to answer those questions up until lock. Again, this card starts at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time today. It is UFC Noche. Starting a little early because tonight, really good boxing card as well. If you guys are in Discord, feel free to ping me on that. Definitely looking forward to that between Canelo, and Crawford. Really fun day of fights today. We also got college football, NFL tomorrow, MLB getting into the playoffs, Sox Yanks. So much to look forward to, and then the long shots again here for you guys, real quick. But yeah, like the video, subscribe to the channel, check the links. And yeah, so Mr. Grapefruit, Medina worth a look at 69. In so few words, yes, more so because I think Dusko is not great. His wins have come against the low of the low, but I do think Medina's the low of the low. Um, you can mix them in. I wouldn't want your whole night depending on if you're playing one lineup. It's tough for me to recommend Medina. I'd much rather go to say Lopez for 100 more, even though I'm picking Silva. But it's one of the lowest level matchups you're going to see in the UFC. I don't think it's crazy. He's durable, probably going to get taken down a few times early, but if he can survive to the third, his cardio and durability could be enough to maybe pull it off. So hope that answers your question. Again, not someone I want my night to depend on. He's got a chance though, probably a better chance than the line suggests. Um, that's all for me, guys. Appreciate you. And yeah, Mr. Grapefruit, 1-8 sounds about right to me. I like that. Appreciate you guys. Again, good luck tonight. Good luck today. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, check out the links. Follow me on Twitter at DFS as well. Take